King of the Wind by Margaret Henry, illustrated by Wesley Dennis. No wonder the crowds took this great colt to their hearts. There was no telling what future held in store for him. Friends had urged Mr. Riddle to send man o' war to England after the Windsor race. They wanted him to run in the famous Newmarket races where his great ancestors had run. A victory at Newmarket would mean more than Big Red's admirers, than all the smashing victories in America, for they had experienced a deep hurt when their favorite horse was excluded from the British stud book because he was not at all thoroughbred. To have him win a Newmarket would ease the hurt, but Big Red was never to race again. Mr. Riddle had come to the most important decision. One night, not long before the race in Canada, he had visited in New York with a judge who determined how much weight each horse should carry to make a race evenly matched. Man o' War would soon be 4 years old. Mr. Riddle said, "What weight will you have him then?" The reply came without hesitation. "I'll have to give him more weight than ever a racehorse carried," the judge said. Man o' War was the greatest horse alive. Samuel Riddle knew Man o' War was strong and swift, that he had carried more weight than other horses. He accepted the decision as fair, but he knew, too, that more weight might weaken Man o' War's legs, might break his great fighting heart as well. It would be better to retire him in a perfect condition without a mark on him. Mr. Riddle made up his mind. After the match race for Sir Barton, he would withdraw Big Red from racing. Telling no one of his decision, he marked his sorrow in silence. Neither his trainer nor his jockey nor Man o' War's thousands of friends at Canadian's race suspected the truth. Alone in the crowd of 30,000, Mr. Riddle knew that he was watching Big Red run his last race. When the roar and the tumult were over, he quietly gave out the news. Followers of Big Red were stunned. After Newmarket, it would have seemed all right to retire Man o' War. His victory there would have been a fighting ending post to a great career, but now friends and strangers too tried to persuade Man o' War's owner to change his mind. Mr. Riddle only smiled in the quiet way of his. He knew that Big Red did not need victories at Newmarket to prove his prodigies. What did it matter if one of the great granddames was a cart horse and had less than royal blood in her veins? What did it matter that she had kept him out of who's and who's of the horse world? In male decent Man o' War's blood was a traceable and unbroken line of the great Godolphin Arabian himself. Then Mr. Riddle began to think about the Godolphin Arabian. He had not raced at Newmarket either. He had no prodigy at all. He had been lost. He had to write a new one with his own blood. The blood that flowed in the veins of his sons and daughters. Man o' War could do that too. The great son could follow in the footsteps of his famous ancestors. We could live on in his colts and grand colts. They could win the races at Newmarket. But it was not easy for Mr. Riddle. It was not easy for Mr. Riddle to convince his friends that his plan was the right one. Often he had to go back 200 years and tell them the story of the Godolphin Arabian. And that is the end of the Great Sun.